Okay, if this is working, I should have audio and the game sound. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. Oops. Just a little bit choppy streaming, but we'll see. All right. Okay, I'm working on creating some sectors. I'm having some crashing with this tool, so it might not work, but alright. First thing I usually do is try to get the decor color, something that I like. This sector to be about. First thing I usually do is get the sort of light sources sorted out. Kind of where I want them positioned. So this is going to start, I think, dark background, but we're going to actually put quite a bit of light in here. So let me know if like something is going on with the stream or something in live chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that. The heck, why do I have the sun spinning? Alright. A lot of times what I do with the Coronas is I make two of them and make them both spinning slightly different directions. So this one's spinning at 0.9 degrees per second, and I usually just make the other one negative that, and you get this kind of look that it's not real obvious stuff is spinning unless you're really looking at it. It just kind of has a some like subtle movement to it. And I usually duplicate the stars, and I have a texture that I use for stars. I usually turn this really dark at first so it's easy for me to see what's going on. It's actually kind of cool, and this texture sort of has baked in like a little bit of a like radiating light effect. So let's Okay, scale to about the sun size. Again, with these, I'll give it some rotation. And what's a cool complementary color for a greenish colored sun? I think that's going to end up being kind of cool. Then again, duplicate this, rotate it the opposite direction, change the Z offset, and you end up with subtle movement. Kind of looks like things might be a little bit beyond the edge of the sun, so I think I want to scale them down just a tiny bit. So that's the first texture. There's the second one. I'm never going to get those to line up, so I'm just going to actually delete that one. And then I'll get this exactly where I want it. The other thing is when you duplicate stuff, it has exactly the same Z, so I usually push it behind and then pull it to where it's just barely forward so the Z values aren't exact. Close enough. In this case, it's better to be a little bit smaller than a little bit bigger. So if it's too small, it just looks like there's a little extra like atmospheric glow, but if it's too big, it creates a dark, hard line outside of the sun's border, and that's not cool. Just a second here, I'm gonna tweet this live stream just in case some of my Gamedev followers want to check it out. Okay, so again, we want to turn the alpha way down on this texture, and then we're going to duplicate it, and this one we're going to rotate the opposite direction. And that'll just give the sun some subtle movement. Usually I use a little bit different color in here too. So let's try a green. A bit more of a blue-green maybe, or yeah, that looks good. And that's going to give the sun kind of a subtle movement effect. Now we need duplicate this, push it back just a little bit. Let's get cloud. Yeah, that's a good cloud. Why, but I'm not able to. I really need to make a like set to 0 on this. It's gonna be easier to just add something here. If you have any questions on how stuff works or what the heck I'm doing, feel free to post a comment. It's going to be a cool contrasty color. need to shove this way back behind the sun. I think I want to add some more foreground clouds that are sort of like dark clouds around this with this sort of like light stream in the middle. I'll put a bunch of stars in that. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. Let's use cloud 1. Pull this way forward. That's about a good spot. Let's make this a nice dark purple. Now if I put 2 of these, rotating very slowly this way. And this one, I'm going to put rotating the other way. Almost these could be just straight up black. A blue black. Ooh, looks like I have a hard line in my texture there. I'll need to fix that, because that kind of stuff really shows up. Now, how many stars should this have? So this is going to be a really, I think I want some mid-range clouds that are gonna lighten this up a little bit. So let's duplicate this one. Let's pull it a little closer to the camera. Get some layering going on here. That's the main thing we're trying to do. I'm trying to decide if I want this to rotate or not. Like, too much movement's distracting, but if it's really subtle, I like that, I think. Okay, now let's get some stars in the background here, because that's going to help me kind of visualize how this is coming together. Some star fields in here somewhere. Let's start with the medium one. And we can make these stars kind of greenish. Not strongly green, but a little bit. I like these, you know, kind of creating contrasting colors here. Complementary colors or whatever. Okay, now these we want to push way back to the back. So they're going to need to be, I think the sun was around 10,000. Usually these are going to want to be around 11. All the way back. And then we need to scale them up to make them closer to pixel perfect. Like good. Drop the alpha just a little bit. So we're gonna have some really dense star fields in here. And to do these, I just duplicate them and rotate them a little bit, so you can get a lot of stuff out of one field. Sometimes I vary their Z position by quite a bit, so you get like real subtle parallax going on. So if you're careful with this, you can get a lot of mileage out of just like one texture, but if you don't do it right, you start seeing like patterns in it and it looks crappy. So you gotta kind of randomize the rotation a little bit here. I randomize the alphas usually a little bit, and that helps add variety so your eye doesn't pick up on the fact that you're cheating. Also vary the scale a little bit usually. Get some smaller stars in here. For the edges to kind of fade the stars out, I use a little bit lighter star field. I'm going to turn the alpha up on this one. Duplicate it a few times and use it in here. press spacebar pretty regularly. That's my reset camera button. So that's the camera at its actual size, or where you play the game, I guess. You can zoom in the game a little bit, but not near as much as you can zoom in the editor. For some reason, OBS eats my keystrokes now and then, so my hotkeys don't work as expected. Okay, so I got a good background. It's like kind of gotten interesting with the colors. I need some more midground, and I think what I want to do is I created some new art. I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. I think I want to try out some of this new art that I created and see how it looks. So I created a bunch of debris pieces. And I kind of want to mess with those a little bit. Oh, 692, I don't want that. That's just a little bit above. Piece, pull it just a little bit closer to the camera as well. It's kind of a broken piece, like the station's been attacked before or whatever. Like I want to give it kind of a story here. So this piece we want full alpha. We're gonna push this back a ways. Want it to be back further. Yeah, back in the background a ways. Give this on rotation speed. Just barely have it rotating. Start it out at a little bit different offset. And this piece, what do we want to do with this piece? Oops. I want to rotate it on the y-axis. Distance. We can duplicate this and kind of tell a story here. There was a you know, some kind of accident here, and so there's like pieces of station that need to be cleaned up. Something. I'm just pulling this and then checking the parallax. I really want these stations to feel like they have some volume in Z space, basically. There's a broken piece of dock right here. Here we go. Push this. Oops, push this back a little bit. So here's the remains of some stuff that was left back in space. Now that piece way back in the background doesn't look quite right to me, so I'm going to move that and bring that forward a little ways. See what this piece is at. We're at like 599, yeah, and this is way too far back. Now, one thing about the station is it has transparency, the second layer, which works well when there's not stuff behind it, but it might look kind of funky with pieces behind it, so I might actually move these pieces a ways out. And by the time it covers it, yeah, you'll be pretty much off screen unless you're at a really high resolution, so. Move our little story we're telling. That's a little better. There's a bug I need to fix. It's foreground stuff that's above zero can actually cover the screen, cover like the UI, which is stupid. But okay, we got ourselves some space junk. I feel like I want one more ship piece in here. Let's find another ship piece. There's a ship piece. space some of this stuff out a little bit more. Alright. Sometimes I pull this way to the side to get a sense of how far off my layers are. Because you want good like spacing of your layers for depth. So I think one thing that's going to help us a little bit is add a planet or two in here. I want this to be almost the same color as the background. So pretty, like subtle color, because that'll really look cool against that green stuff that's going on back there. And then these planets have a subtle shadow along one side, so we want to make sure that that's turned away from the sun. Now that can change with parallax, so you can't get perfect, 3D lighting in 2D, but you can definitely get close, and that'll still look good even when it's over the sun, because when it's over the sun, the whole thing looks darker anyway, so the shadow gets pretty subtle. So we want to push this back a ways. Yeah, let's push it back. The sun's at like 10,000, and most of the close stuff is like closer than -500, so we push this down into the like 2,000 or 3,000s. It'll add some nice depth here, maybe a little further back than that. As we push it back, that shadow's going to get more obvious. Yeah, I like how it's blending in more though, because we're going to do something like the planet's going to look close to the background because it's picking up kind of the ambient light or something. Now sometimes it looks better to use a lower resolution planet far back because it makes it blurrier. So like if you get too close to it, you can see that it's pixelated, but really multi-sampling or multi-sampling is gonna help us out here a little bit. So we're actually going to use a smaller planet to be a bigger planet, which doesn't sound like it makes sense, but okay. Now one thing that's really going to make this stand out is the atmosphere. So I just duplicated my planet, and let's give it, find my atmosphere thing, and we're gonna give this a nice like kind of green glow from the planet behind it. Just a slight green. And then we need to scale it down to where it fits the planet almost perfectly. Oops. Scale it down a little bit too small, and then we'll scale it up until it's just right. And then just to make sure I don't have any like Z flicker, I'll push it behind and then pull it just barely to where it covers the planet. Turn the alpha down on that. Ooh, now see when we turn the alpha down, you can see that I'm not very well lined up actually, so there you go. Now that really makes that planet stand out. It's looking a little too blue when we turn the alpha down, so I'm gonna turn the blue down to green it back up a little bit. And if we really want to make this stand out, we'll turn this way down. This is the overlay, and we'll duplicate it. Turn this one up a little bit. Push it behind the planet. And then, oops, we don't want it much behind the planet though. Just barely, okay? And then we'll offset it a little bit like this, so it makes the front glow more. And to do that, we're also going to have to scale it down a little bit. So this is repurposing your textures to cheat. So that's going to make it look like the sun is really lighting up that the one side more than the other. And now that we've got it in place, we can turn the alpha down a little bit. So now the front of that planet's definitely glowing more than the back. I'm probably not going to do a ton more to this sector. Need to save. Ooh. My computer does not handle OBS very well. I feel like maybe I want this planet to have some texture because it does feel like it's pretty close to us. So, planet medium, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. Choose one of my planet textures here. And again, turn it really dark so we can see what we need to do here. Okay, we need to scale that down. So far I haven't been real pleased with how this texture looks. So I don't know if I'm going to end up using it much in game or not. And let's blue that up. There we have just enough texture to make it a little bit more convincing. Now, I just had this idea and I can't remember what it was. I think we need some more mid-tier clouds, so duplicate that and alpha up. I really like this texture, this cloud, so we're going to use this. And again, I'm going to get some more green in here. Maybe a little bit of a yellow green. Helps to really understand how color mixing works. Because implementing an actual like color picker would have been a giant pain in the butt. So this works as long as you kind of get how RGB values work. I'm going to push this back, should be just a little bit behind the planet, yep. And then I want to make sure it doesn't mirror the other texture too close or it'll be, just won't look cool. Now one thing I haven't done that I think I'm going to try is put some like just flecks of like dark material in here to give it some more depth. So what I'm going to do that is duplicate this texture again, and I'm going to set this down to basically black. alpha up so I can see it. And I'm going to use one of the star fields. I don't want that out. It's going to make it look just a little bit busier. I don't want those covering the sun. You have to fly quite a ways, and I'll alpha them down a lot, so. That's kind of okay if they're over the sun. If I like that or not. Might add some texture out here a little bit. Liking this. One thing I have not also used yet, one of the art resources I created, but I don't know if it's good yet. Previous test didn't work out very well. Here's my planet. I've created this planet ring. So here we go. Let's see if we can make this look cool. Before, it just didn't look right. So I'll rotate this. Nope, not on the Y, on the X axis. And be really catching the light if it was rotated this way. The heck? That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. Brain does not work in these axes very well. Now, there's an interesting thing with these sprites. The first one in Z is drawn first no matter what, so it will draw over the planet. That's why I have to make it fade out, because see, the back of the ring does not draw behind the planet, it draws before, even if it's technically got a exactly the same Z. That's just not how graphics cards work. I don't totally understand that. Vic explained it to me, but I still don't totally get it. Ooh, I might be digging the ring on this one. This new ring I created is way better than the other one. And it's looking kind of cool. The main thing with the rings was like, when you move past them, they still have to look good. You know, they don't have any thickness to them. Like a real model, it's just a sprite, so it's like has no thickness, so as you move past it, it has to still look good, but I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave that in. Feel free to express your opinions if you're watching the feed. The grid shows the actual sector bounds. I haven't built this yet, but eventually, like when you fly out of a sector, your ship's gonna start taking like heat damage or something, so that way I don't have to art as far out. Okay, last thing I think I'm gonna do is add a few foreground clouds just for some texture. And probably call it good. I'm gonna make these kind of lighter. Start there. And I'm gonna bring them just north of Z0. Really tiny amount of rotation. And duplicate that. Give it that one's just behind the camera, or just behind the player, and this one will be just in front. I'm gonna make this one a little bit yellow. Ooh yeah, that pops. Might speed up the rotation just a little bit. It's very surreal. A dig. Okay. This one. Color. Let's make this a little. There we go. Offset this a little bit. With that subtle movement. Alright, I think I'm going to call this one good for now and probably in the stream, so you guys can pretty much get the full picture of how the sector editor tool works for the game. Go ahead and save that. And then I always like to kind of check that the save didn't get totally screwed, which, I mean, at this point, if it did, I would be out of luck anyway, but just make sure everything loads back up, because this tool's there we go. It's pretty. I like purple and green. I'm gonna screenshot this real quick. Alright, I'm going to call it there. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing the new tools at work. Get an idea of what will be coming in the 5th version of Masteroid, which will probably release sometime next week. So that's it.